Hello my sweet friends, welcome back. I am coming from a few days in the future because I forgot to film an intro, but welcome back to another reading vlog. Today we are going to be reading a few new releases that I am so excited about. They are all very highly anticipated new releases for me, and I'm excited to share my reading journey with you. There are so many new releases at the moment, and there are so many books that I could have chosen to include in this video, but I decided to go with 3 books that I'm excited about. The first one will be Reckless by Lauren Roberts. The second will be A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. And lastly, I'll be picking up Dishonestly Yours by Krista and Becca Ritchie, who are also the authors of the Addicted/Calloway Sister series. So I am really intrigued to read all of these and see what my thoughts are. These are all from authors that I already know and love, so I'm hoping these live up to my high expectations. I feel like reading new releases pretty close to their release date is always so fun because you don't really know what to expect. You don't know if they're going to be good or bad. You don't know what other people's thoughts are yet, so you just get to go in completely blind with no one else swaying your opinions, and it's just my favorite way to read books. It really is. So hopefully you guys enjoy coming along with me for the journey. I started reading Reckless yesterday. I am at page 145. It's really good so far. So far, definitely not as good as the first one, in my opinion, but I'm hoping I might like it more as I go on. I obviously won't talk about what's going on because spoilers, but it feels so good to be back in this world, back with these characters. Very different dynamic this time though. I've got my cozy PJs, my cozy blanket, obviously my book, and then we've got some snacks and some tabs. We already have a few tabs in there, but I'm excited to continue. Another day, same couch, same blanket, same book. I am now at page 250. I wonder if I'll finish it today. We'll see. I am definitely really enjoying this. I just can't help but compare it to Powerless, obviously, because it's the second book in that series. And I don't know, it's not quite as good as Powerless to me. I think one thing that Lauren Roberts does so well is dialogue. I love the dialogue that she gives us. I love the witty banter and the tension between our two main characters and just the way they feed off each other. It's perfect. I really don't think anyone does it like Lauren Roberts does when it comes to dialogue. And so when we do get those pieces of dialogue and those little witty conversations and the characters almost making fun of each other and whatever, I eat it up. I'm giggling, I'm kicking my feet, I'm having so much fun. But the issue is I don't feel like we're getting a lot of it. Or is it that I'm just so excited to get to the dialogue that every time it's not dialogue, I'm just waiting for it to be dialogue, if that makes sense. And the thing is with this book, I'm assuming she doesn't want to just give us a book of dialogue because then it loses its shine. Nothing is exciting if you have too much of it. And so I'm wondering if she's just giving us these little snippets and these little quick conversations and things like that because she wants us wanting more of it, but it is just making me just sitting here begging for more, and I'm just it's not enough for me. I just want more of it, but the pieces that we do get are so good. But then as soon as we're not in a conversation with our two main characters, I almost couldn't care less, especially because the plot in this one, I feel at this point is kind of lacking. Unfortunately, it's giving middle book syndrome to me. By that I mean the authors create a really awesome first book and they come up with a really awesome plot and big final huge exciting plot for the third book, but they somehow need to bridge those two things together, and therefore we end up with middle books that end up feeling like a bridge. They don't feel like they have a particularly strong plot. They don't feel like they could stand on their own, and this book is kind of feeling like that to me a little bit. The plot itself, what is actually happening in this book, it just feels like a bit of a cycle and a little bit repetitive. The overall thing that's happening is just bad situation, get their way out of it, plot along. Bad situation, get their way out of it, plot along. And I don't love it when books do that because I've seen it in many books, and it's just not my favorite. It's not my favorite. With all of that being said, I do want you guys to know that I am still really enjoying this, and I'm having so much fun with it, but I am definitely enjoying certain parts more than others, and I do still feel like the first book was a lot stronger to me, especially because I was just really interested in the plot of the first book as well as the characters. And with this one, I'm not nearly as invested in the plot, more so just the characters. But I'm also hoping that will change because I don't know, I thought there was also going to be something else that happened in this book that hasn't happened yet that I'm still gonna, like, I think it still might happen, but I'm like, we only have about 130 pages left. Like, I don't know, there's a lot that I feel like needs to happen in this last 130 pages because a lot, like what has actually happened in the first 250 pages? Kind of a lot of nothing. Like, has there been any progress? Kind of, no. Kind of, yes, but mostly no. I definitely don't think it's giving me 5-star feelings. And I was so sure this would be. I was so sure. I don't know, am I being too critical? I don't know. Hopefully I have a really fun time in this last, like, 130 pages, and hopefully it'll really impress me. The tension. I think I have about 30 pages left and I am so nervous to see how this is gonna end. I will say, last time I talked to you guys, I had a few complaints, I'm not gonna lie. And as much as I still stand by what I have said, I do think the last like 100 pages have been so strong. I think mostly because we've just had a lot of dialogue, which again is what I love. And I think overall the second half of this book is a little bit stronger than the first half. I have no idea how this is gonna end and I'm kind of nervous because again, this is the second book in a trilogy. We have a whole nother book after this and I'm assuming we probably won't get like a proper happy ending until the end of the third book just because that's typically what happens, but I could be wrong. And that would mean that we won't get a happy ending in this one, but I'm just like, what on earth is gonna happen? I have two theories on what could happen in this book, like at the ending. I actually wrote them on the back page just to see if I'm right. I obviously could be wrong. It's fun to guess, but for now I need to finish the last 30 pages of this. Do you ever have to cover a page so that you don't let yourself read ahead? Because if I think there's a really exciting page, I will just let myself kind of like skim ahead, and I can't let myself do that. So I'm covering it. My heart is actually beating. I think I'm on the last page. I knew it. I knew it. I wrote that down as my theory. I knew it. It just seemed like the only way we were gonna have a third book, and it makes sense politically and also romantically. I can't believe we have to wait like 9 months or something until we get the next book. I'm happy that I guessed what was going to happen at the end, but I'm also kind of sad because to me it seemed quite predictable. I honestly think the author could have been almost like more cryptic with the hints that alluded to the ending. I will say there are 2 other plot points that I really think are going to come into the third book. Like, I'd be shocked if they don't somehow show up in the third book with 2 other characters specifically. I honestly really enjoyed it. However, I don't think I enjoyed it as much as the first book. I enjoyed some parts of this more than the first book, but like overall, there are just some scenes in this book that are so good and so well written, and the dialogue and the tension and like the romance is perfect to me. I think what let this one down to me was just the plot. It just felt like a bit of an in-between book. Like, it just felt like we were just filling in time before we got to the third book. A little bit, I'm not gonna lie. I think like the romance in this book, or like the tension and like the dynamic between the 2 main characters, 5 stars. The plot, maybe 3.5 stars. Like, it wasn't that fantastic. There was not a lot going on. There was like a lot going on, as in like a fight scene every 10 pages, but it wasn't really like a lot going on. I can see this series being a 5-star series, even if not every book is 5 stars, but I don't know, I just love these characters so much. It has been a few days and I just wanted to let my thoughts process a little bit, sit a little bit before I came and gave you my final thoughts. And I want to say overall, I enjoyed this. I had fun. Some of the scenes were perfect. They were. However, as a whole, I was a little bit disappointed. I went in with very, very, very high expectations because Powerless was one of my favorite reads from last year, and this simply did not live up to it. Does that mean that I didn't enjoy the book? Like, no, I did enjoy it. I had a lot of fun, but the whole time I was just comparing it to Powerless in my brain, and I just kept being a little bit sad that it wasn't quite up there, you know? I have started to see some people talk about this now, and one of the big kind of things people have to say is, Lauren Roberts said that it was a bridging book. Lauren Roberts said she needed a bridging book. Like, that's what it is, and we shouldn't expect anything. No. No. You can have a bridging book that still has a good plot. You can have a bridging book that can still stand on its own. And this book does not stand on its own. The only reason this book was still good was because I was already so attached to the characters from the first book. If I wasn't already attached to the characters, this would have basically given me nothing. Like I said, I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time. It's still going to get a good rating from me because of the characters and because of the dynamic between them, because of the dialogue between them, because of the few scenes that we got that were perfect. But overall, the plot needed to be better. There needed to be more. And I'm so sad about that because there's potential. Like, there is so much potential. I feel like I'm almost coming across hypocritical because I keep saying I really enjoyed it and it was really good and like there were some parts that were perfect. And then I'm like, but she could have done better and I was disappointed and blah, 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 blah. And that's just like the truth. I am very conflicted with my thoughts on this book. Overall, disappointed, but still had a good time. That's probably the best way I can summarize it. So do without what you will. I'm going to give it 4 stars. I don't know what else to say, so I'm just going to stop speaking. But we are going to start our next book, which is a novel love story by Ashley Poston. I still don't know which one it is. It's time to move on to our next book. And I have decided to pick up a novel love story by Ashley Poston, I'm actually not sure. I've heard people say it both ways. This is her newest release. She's also the author of The Dead Romantics and The 7-Year Slip. I think there's supposed to be a romance with a grumpy bookshop owner, and that sounds gorgeous. So I'm really intrigued to start this and see what I think because I adored The 7-Year Slip. I loved the writing. I loved how it was like just a cute little rom-com, but it felt, I want to say significant, but that's not like the right word, but it just felt like it had so much more to offer than just a silly little rom-com, yet still felt light enough, like didn't feel super heavy, but just felt like, wow, there's some real substance to this. Maybe that's kind of the word I was looking for. We'll see. I've heard some really mixed reviews about it. I've seen some 3-star reads out there, which is not bad, but when the last book you read from an author was like a 4.5, obviously you hope that the next one will be too, and I don't know. I hope it will be. Obviously everyone has different book taste, and maybe this will be mine, even if it's not others, but I guess we'll see. I'm gonna head off to a cafe to read because I haven't done it in a little while and I miss it. It's like one of my favorite things to do. So let's go get a donut and a coffee and read my book. I wanted to give you guys a reading update. I am about like 95 pages in, I think. I'm really liking it. Like really liking it. So basically the premise of this book is we are following Eileen, who is on her way to her annual book club reading retreat that she does with her besties every year. They all live far apart from each other, but once a year they meet up and they just like read together for a week. And they're all obsessed with this specific author and this specific small town romance series that she has written. So she's doing the long drive to this cabin that they always stay in, and she ends up having to pull over. She has some car issues. There's also a huge storm, so she's like, you know what, we're just gonna pull over, stay the night here, and get back on the road tomorrow. Obviously I don't want to give away too much information, but she ends up staying the night, and the next day she wakes up and she starts to realize some suspicious things going on. All of the people that she meets just seem a little bit familiar, and all of the places in the small town, like the cafe sounds really familiar, has a really familiar name, and like the name of the bar sounds really familiar, and she's like, where do I know these people well, where have I heard these places before? And she realizes that she has magically fallen into her favorite small town romance. Like, she has magically, I don't know how, somehow like crossed into a parallel universe where her favorite romance series is real. And she is in that small town. And so she's like aware of this, but no one else is in the small town. Like, they just think they're living their normal life, doing their normal thing. But she like knows who they are and knows their romance plot lines and all of those things. So it's really fascinating. I am just loving how like silly, goofy this is, because obviously I feel like a lot of small town romances have those very similar cliches, you know, like everyone knows everyone and word spreads quickly, and there's like a girl that works at the diner who's in love with the grumpy guy that owns the ranch or something. Like, they, you know, there's just those like little cliches that always seem to be in small town romances when you read them. And I have read quite a few small town romance interconnected series in my time, and there are definitely just so many like familiar aspects of each of them, and this is incorporating all of them so well. Like, it's definitely a bit cheesy, but also I think that is definitely the point. But that's just kind of my thoughts so far. Really enjoying, love how fun it is, love how like goofy it is. It kind of makes no sense, like how did she end up in this other parallel universe where her small town romance is alive, but also like, does it have to make sense? Like, it's kind of just, it's just fun. Also, we have definitely met who the love interest I think is gonna be, but of course they like started off on the wrong foot and kind of like had a bad first interaction, but I'm sure things will change as I continue reading. I think it's about 360 pages, so I'm not even a third of the way through, and I'm really intrigued to see hopefully some more substance come into it, like a bit more depth, I guess. I'm literally obsessed with the writing. Like, it's just one of those books where I'm reading it and I just don't want to put it down. Like, I could just sit and binge the whole thing, I think. Like, it's just, if I didn't have to do other things, like the pages are just flying past, and I'm just really enjoying it so far. So I'm excited to continue reading it this afternoon. It's like 2 p.m. now. I definitely don't think I'm going to finish it today, but I'm definitely going to try and read a little bit more. It's the next day. I feel like I haven't read that much since I last updated you guys. I'm using a hair tie as my bookmark. I'm up to page 123, but I'm still really, really enjoying it. And there have been a few things. I dog-ear pages, so sorry. I only do it when I don't have a pencil with me to underline the quotes that I want to underline, but literally sue me, I don't care. But there are just like so many, like, I love the way Ashley Poston does this thing where she just like weaves these really, I feel like a few other authors do it too. I feel like Annabelle Monaghan does it as well. And like Emily Henry also does it, I think, where they weave in this like deeper message into a pretty normal scene. Like, the scene itself is not super heavy, not super deep, not super emotional, but she'll just like weave in these little, like, almost if you aren't paying attention you'd miss it kind of thing. So obviously she has like fallen into her favorite book, kind of, and she's talking to one of the characters in the book that she really loved. Like, one of her favorite characters when she was reading it, like now she's hanging out with that character, which is crazy. And now she is like in a building that she read about, and she read like some of her favorite scenes happen in this building, if that makes sense. And all of it so sweetly felt like home. Junie opened the gate of the white picket fence, and I followed her up the delicate stone walkway to the front porch. Welcome home, she said, and my heart skipped in my chest as I stepped into the foyer. It felt a little like coming to a place I'd been 100 times before. And it goes on, but just like how deeply I wish I could experience this. Like, there are so many books that I feel so emotionally tied to, and I'm sure many of you feel the same about certain books. Like, there are so many scenes that live rent-free in my brain, so many characters that live rent-free in my brain. I think of them like friends, you know, they just like stick with you. One of the reasons why I love rereading old books is it just feels so familiar. It feels like going and hanging out with friends. It just feels like coming home. And I feel like Ashley Poston understands that. Like, she knows what it feels like to be a reader. Like a reader who loves a certain book, a certain series, a certain author, whatever it may be. And she gets that it can feel like home, coming back to those characters or that world. And I feel like she described it so simply, but made the feeling so tangible. Anyway, so that one really stood out to me. Another quote that I just thought was so special is, I think I mentioned this, but the book club that she's a part of, so she's like traveling to the book club retreat that she goes to once a year, where she meets up with this one, you know, group of friends that they have a book club together, but they all live really far apart, so it's mostly virtual, and they only see each other like in person once a year. And she's explaining just like the reading retreat and what they do and where they go. And she says, "It's weird, I didn't think some of my best friends would be strangers on the internet. But here we are. My mum doesn't quite get it, but she understands enough. She says that when you find the good ones, you keep them around no matter what." And I just feel that so deeply as a YouTuber, as someone who is so intertwined with the internet. Obviously, it's such a huge part of my life. And some of my best friends I met through the internet. And I just love the book community so much. I love my little corner of the internet so much. I love that. I think this one is maybe my favorite quote that I've read from this book so far. It's like the first paragraph of chapter 5. It says, "Sometimes a book can change your life. It's hard to explain that to someone who doesn't read or who has never felt their heart bend so strongly toward a story that it might just snap in two. Some books are a comfort, some a reprieve, others a vacation, a lesson, a heartbreak. I'd met countless stories by the time I'd read a book that changed my life. At first, it didn't really feel like anything special. It was a romance, one I picked up at my local independent bookstore because I had a fun cover and I like small town stories, and I'd been in my hardest year of undergrad, and just the sight of a book made my stomach turn from all the anxiety and late night essays and GPAs and scholarship funding, and the book was just sitting there." And it goes on for a little bit just like describing that moment. "The moment was so unassuming, so normal. Sometimes that's how it happens. Sometimes your favorite book just hits you out of the blue like a bolt of lightning." And then it goes on to talk about how that book pretty much like changed her life and like changed the trajectory of her career. And again, like I just feel this so deeply because I did love reading growing up. I was such a bookworm as a kid, and like even heading into high school, and then I just kind of fell off when high school got busier and university was so busy as well, like working part-time, blah blah blah. And I've talked about this before, but like coming back to reading after like a bit of a like hiatus, I guess, like I was just so busy and it kind of I just stopped thinking about books. And then coming back to it in 2020, it has literally changed my life. And like now books and reading is such a huge part of my life, my career, my friendships, like so many things. There are genuinely books that have changed my life. And this again explains that so well. I'm really, really loving this book. I've been talking for much too long, so I'm gonna continue reading this and update you guys later. I just looked back at the last clip that I filmed for this vlog, which was a few days ago. I'm in the same outfit, sitting in the same spot with the same blanket, reading the same book. I promise I've done other things. I promise I've moved from this spot, but it doesn't look like it based on this vlog. Like I said, it's been a few days and I only have like maybe, how many pages? 40 pages left of this book. Guys, I'm not gonna lie, I am loving it. I'm loving it. I don't know, I love the characters. I love the way it's written. I love every just small little detail about the town's people and like their little quirks and the dynamics between them. Like even the whole like magical element of it just feels so special. I think it's giving me 5-star feelings, which I'm shocked at. I was not expecting to love this book as much as I am. I'm so confused because I've seen so many people rate this 3 stars, and obviously everyone just has different opinions, so like that's fine, but I'm like, what don't they like about this? Because I can't think of anything I don't like about it. I will say, I think this book is definitely like right book, right time. I think I could have read this book at a different time and maybe it not hit as hard, or maybe I wouldn't have been as obsessed, but the way I imagine the town and like the characters and like the way it's all playing out in my head is just so perfect and exactly like what I wanted and what I needed, and I guess just like what I was in the mood for. Like this is just everything I could have wanted out of this book. I've been out all day and I just knew in the back of my head that when I got home I would be able to like sit here and finish this book, and I was so excited about it all day. I just really like it. I'm gonna finish this book now. Hopefully the last 40 pages are as good as the rest of the book has been, but I have high hopes. I'm so sad that's over. So I finished a novel love story last night, and I wanted to give you guys, I guess, my final thoughts now that I've had a bit of time to let it sit with me, I guess. Honestly, 5 stars. I loved this. I loved it so much. It gave me the 5-star feeling. I enjoyed every single page of this book, like every step of the way. I was having a great time. It was one of those books where I wasn't even paying attention to the page count or like when the next chapter was going to be, which I definitely find myself doing sometimes. Like I'll be like, oh, it's only been 10 pages. I feel like I've been reading this book for so long, or oh, how many pages till the end of the chapter and I can like take a break or whatever. And if I had the time, I could just sit and read this book for hours without any sort of distraction or getting bored or anything. Like I just loved the entire experience. And I'm not exactly sure why, because this book wasn't the most revolutionary thing I've ever read. At the end of the day, it was just a cute little rom-com with some depth, but it was just the perfect cute little rom-com and the perfect amount of depth for me personally. I feel like the premise of this was absolutely amazing. I loved just like the concept of this book loving girly magically ending up in a book that she loved, like in the small town with the characters that she knew and loved. And I feel like Ashley Poston just really understands the reading experience, like what it feels like to be a reader, what it feels like to fall in love with a book, what it feels like to fall in love with characters and small towns, and the idea of being able to fall into my favorite book and actually meet the characters that I love so much and actually experience the world that they live in. What I would do to be able to do that. And so that concept was just absolutely amazing. But then also having a good plot line and a good storyline, it all just like made sense to me and it just worked in my mind. The little tiny like messages kind of woven into the storyline about, well, there were so many things that she kind of weaved into it. I loved the way she talked about feeling like a secondary character in your own life, like not feeling like the main character. I love how she talked about the escapism that your favorite book can give you, especially when life isn't necessarily perfect, and like the comfort that books can provide, the loneliness that is like removed just by diving into your favorite book. It also talks about the idea of feeling behind, or like your friends are moving on in life without you. So many things that just hit so hard. It definitely felt like a women's fiction book with a romance. I feel like the romance obviously was significant, but it didn't feel like the whole book. Like it didn't feel like this whole book was really revolving around this romance. It kind of felt more like the book was revolving around our main character's life and like the struggles and things that she was going through. And then there was like a romance on the side, which I personally love. I love that type of book, but I wouldn't go in expecting like it is a lot of romance, but it's also very like women's fiction-esque, I would say. And I honestly think I liked it more than The 7-Year Slip, which I wasn't expecting based on what I'd heard other people say about it. But I guess it just goes to show that you're just going to have different opinions to other people. And that's so good and so fun. And it also shows you that even if you haven't heard great recommendations about a book, but it sounds like something you could really enjoy, why not give it a read? Why not give it a chance? Because it could end up being a 5-star read. I feel like I could talk about this book for a long time, but I'm going to put it down and we are going to move on to our last book of this video, and that is Dishonestly Yours by Krista and Becca Ritchie. Can you tell my favorite reading spot at the moment? Maybe this couch. Maybe, who knows? But I have a reading update for you guys. I'm 126 pages into Dishonestly Yours, and I don't know how I feel about it yet. I definitely am enjoying it, but I don't think it's going to be a 5-star read. It is a lot of fun. The premise of this one is that we have Phoebe and Haley, who are best friends, and their mums are also best friends, and both of their families are like heavily involved in the con artist world. I don't know if there's like a better name for that, but both Phoebe and Haley's parents are con artists and just go from job to job to job doing these different cons and just like tricking people out of money. And Haley and Phoebe are just like, we're done with this. We have like grown up basically being raised to be con artists along with their siblings, and we're just so done. We just don't want to live this life anymore. We don't want to feel like we're running from everything. We don't want to have to move all the time. We don't want to be deceiving people all the time. We just want to be normal. And so they have decided to basically run away from their family and move to Connecticut, is it? A small college town in Connecticut. And they've planned to get jobs and just like live a normal life. Just like be normal girls. I think they're like 23 or 24. So yeah, they just want to like start fresh. However, Haley's older brother, Rocky, has caught them while they were trying to escape to Connecticut, and he's basically like, I don't think you should go. I think it's dangerous. I don't think you should like leave the families behind. But he just like can't convince them not to go. So he's like, well, I'm gonna go with you so that I can protect you and hopefully convince you to come back with me a little bit later. He's just kind of thinking maybe they just need to pretend to be normal for a little bit, realize maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be, and then I can take them home. So he has followed them to Connecticut, and that's kind of where we are now. The girls have gotten jobs, they're trying to be normal people, Rocky's trying to keep an eye on them, and we're also getting a bunch of flashbacks to a few years ago to different jobs that Phoebe and Haley and their siblings and their families have been a part of. And it's really interesting reading the flashbacks and like seeing the different con work that they've done, I guess. This is also dual POV, so we have one POV from Phoebe and one POV from Rocky. So as you can assume, Rocky is the love interest, so it's a bit of a best friend's brother situation. And it's definitely one of those scenarios where there's obvious chemistry between Phoebe and Rocky. For some reason or another, they just like don't want to go there. They also act like they hate each other, but it's a bit of like a banter back and forth. They aren't very like nice to each other, like they're always like arguing with each other, but you can tell that they care about each other. Like it's definitely not enemies to lovers, but it kind of has like that similar vibe to it. Maybe even like rivals to lovers, but again, they're not necessarily rivals. Like their families work together. So I don't know, but it gives those vibes, if that makes sense. So definitely interesting. I'm really intrigued to see where the storyline goes. I'm assuming this is supposed to be the first book in a brand new series. And I would say my favorite thing about the Addicted Calloway Sister series was 1, the character development, and 2, the found family. However, that series is a 10-book series, and obviously this is book 1 in a new series. And even if Krista and Becca Ritchie are able to recreate the same level of character development and found family in this series as they were able to do in the Addicted/Calloway Sister series, obviously that's not going to happen in book 1. So I feel like it could be the case of like, I might like this, but I might not like it as much as I might like future books that come out in this series once they get a little bit more attached to the characters. But we'll see. We'll see. I'm definitely enjoying it. It's easy to read. It's entertaining. The con artist situation is very interesting to me. So I'm having a good time. I have about 100 pages left of this book, so I thought I'd give you, ooh, I'm kind of matching today, the pink and the red. Anyway, not the point. I'm still having a lot of fun with this book. I'm still enjoying it. However, I definitely am having a lot more fun with just like the plot line and the family dynamics and the con artist situation. Like the romance, couldn't care less. I just don't feel connected to the characters that are supposed to be falling in love. Obviously they have a lot of history because they grew up together, but I just can't see it. I can't see the like romance of it. It feels quite lusty. Like they definitely have chemistry, like I've mentioned, but as for actual feelings, they like care about each other and they're quite protective and possessive over each other, but I just feel like I'm not like convinced that they actually love each other. Or maybe it's just like not my personal type of romance. I think for me personally, I'm not as big on the possessive, she's mine, don't touch her kind of thing. I'm much more like an acts of service or guy doing sweet things for girl, or like pouring out feelings, and there are no feelings in this book. It doesn't feel like there's any like emotion. It just kind of feels like, no, I can't have feelings, you know? So the romance, I don't know. It's there. But again, if this is the first book in a series, I'm not even sure if they're gonna end up together by the end of this book. Maybe they'll end up together in a future book. Maybe they will end up together in this book. I don't know what the situation is. But I will say the like storyline took a little bit of a turn. I don't exactly remember when, but we've kind of been focusing on another character a little bit more, which I have found very interesting. And I've just found out something that was super interesting, like a bit of a secret that has now been revealed that is, yeah, really interesting to me. So I'm still very much enjoying it, but I personally wouldn't recommend it as like a great romance book. I would say it's more of like a drama, or yeah, I guess maybe a drama is the best way to describe it. It almost feels like kind of in the Inheritance games. This is such a bad comparison because they're not very similar, but in the Inheritance games, how there's like all of these things happening and there's like family dynamics and there's mysteries and they're trying to figure things out, and then there's like romance in it, but the romance is not like the main thing. That's almost how I feel about this. Like I think the romance is supposed to be the main thing, but it doesn't really
feel like it to me because that's just not the part that I'm as interested in as the reader. Like, I'm just much more interested in the con artist situation. I will say, we've been introduced to more family members, and I think like the found family is starting to build, which I love. I love Krista and Becca Ritchie's found family. They just really kill it. So although it's not like the best found family yet, I can really see it starting to build, you know? And especially as future books continue, like I can't wait to see more of the other characters. It's not one of those books where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't put it down, but it's definitely entertaining.
I just finished this, and that ending, or like the last like 30 pages or so, crazy. Like, I do need to know what's gonna happen next. We are at the end of this reading vlog, so I wanted to do a quick little recap, as I always do. Starting off with Reckless. I liked this, I had fun, however I was disappointed. I was expecting more from this than what it gave. I thought the romance was fantastic, some of the scenes that we got were fantastic, but overall the plot was so lacking. It was such a middle book, and I just strongly believe that middle books don't need to fall into middle book syndrome. In my opinion, middle books should be just as good as the first book, just as good as the last book. I feel like calling them bridging books is a bit of an excuse, but that's just my personal opinion. I am really excited to read the final book in the series, and again, I enjoyed it, just wasn't quite as good as Powerless, so I was a little bit sad about that, but 4 stars. A novel love story, perfect show-stopping, exactly what I wanted from this book. Again, like I said earlier in this video, I think this was just like right book, right time. It just hit the spot for me, and I definitely recommend. 5 stars. And finally we have Dishonestly Yours. This was fun, but it wasn't amazing to me. I think I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. I loved the con artist element to it. I thought the family dynamics were great, and I'm really excited for this series to continue and hopefully to become really attached to a new Krista and Becca Ritchie cast of characters. But for now, it's good. I'm just waiting for it to be great, you know? So overall, honestly, a pretty successful reading vlog. I recommend all of these, honestly. A 5-star, a 4-star, and a 3.5 star. I always just find it so fun to read new releases, and hopefully you guys enjoyed coming along with me for the ride. But I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.